When it comes to building and investing in teams and properly managing your gear in Honkai Star Rail, there's a lot of things that people don't really talk about. As someone who has the rank 1 best Jinglius in the world, I see her used to this day to 1 cycle and even 0 cycle content with her, despite her being a very old character. I'm going to be showing you a lot of tips and tricks on how to properly invest in your teams, how to manage and how to upgrade your gear, and I will even be giving you a list on what to pull for each team and archetype in the whole game and explain why they are good for their team. I know it might sound crazy, but the second half of this video is just going to be me talking about what are the best investments of each team. So let's get into it. Just a quick heads up, this video is mainly going to be from a meta perspective. So if you are just someone who don't really care about like how to optimize their characters and just want to use whatever teams they want, like feel free to do so. This is not me telling you that you should or should not do. Like I am not your father. I don't even know why you clicked on this video in the first place. I'm kidding. But even if you are a waifu or a husband or enjoyer, I think there might be a lot of things to learn from this. Also, this video is going to be mainly targeted toward like beginners and intermediate players, because I noticed there's a lot of people who are struggling to clear end game, and because they approach the game from a wrong perspective, they treat it like other gachas. But Honkai Star Rail is a bit different. I'll get into why later. But yeah, this video is going to be mainly for people who are completely lost. They don't know how to manage their gear, they don't know how to properly invest in their teams. So this is going to be to guide newer and intermediate players. If you are an end game player, chances are like you might know some of these things, but you might not know them if you're not really engaged and up to date with what happens in the game right now. So what makes Honkai Star Rail different? So unlike other gacha games, Honkai Star Rail is a turn-based game. What this means is that unlike other action games like, I don't know, Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, Tower of Fantasy, Zenless Zone Zero, etc., those games have more skill expression in them compared to Honkai Star Rail. What this means is that if you are good in one of those games, like in Genshin, and you know how to properly optimize your rotations, how to use your characters, how to dodge, you don't get hit, etc., then your investments doesn't really mean that much. Like in fact, even if you are a good player with less investment, you might perform better than a player who has higher investment than you but is a worse player compared to you. So those games have more skill expression. You can get away with less investment. But Honkai Star Rail is different because it's a turn-based game where stats and team compositions and synergies matter a lot. Like for example, in turn-based games, there is no such thing as dodging. You tank every damage that you get. Of course, there are some ways to play around that, like delaying the enemies, speed tuning, etc. But those are some really advanced things that I'm not going to really mention in because they are a bit complicated and they still require a lot of investment to even pull those off. But generally speaking, in Honkai Star Rail, like you have to tank damage, you have to properly play around the boss's mechanics, and you can't bypass a lot of things like you do in other action games. And this is the main reason why team compositions in Honkai Star Rail are very important. And this is why you see a lot of people usually discuss the meta more in Honkai Star Rail compared to other games. Because other games you can just use like, even you can use like the characters that are not best in slot for your DPS and you can still clear comfortably. But Honkai Star Rail can be a bit restrictive when it comes to team compositions. And this will bring me to my next point, which is horizontal and vertical investments. So what is horizontal and vertical investment? I know some people might hear these terms and they might think, what are we doing? Are we going to be studying maths? Math? Sorry, don't worry, we're not going to be studying either of those two, neither maths nor maths. But they might sound like some fancy words, but no, they're really, really simple. So horizontal investments is basically when you pull for a character and you don't really invest too much into them. So what this means is that you pull for your DPS or your favorite character or whatever, and then you just keep them at E0, and then you might or might not pull for their light con, and then you pull for their supports, and you do the same for them. Like you keep them at E0, you pull for the next character until you finish your team, and that's it. You're done with that team, you go to the next team, you do the same for it, etc. We call it horizontal vertical investment because it goes like as in a straight line. Like you can imagine like it goes like this. You get a character, then you jump to the other one, you don't spend too much time into them, and then you go to the other one, and that's it. Like you don't really put too many dupes, you don't put any dupes for the character, not anything. And that's pretty much what horizontal investment is. You just pull for a team and a character without investing too much into it. As for vertical investment, as you might have guessed it, it's the opposite. So vertical investment is when you pull for a character and you invest more into them. What this means is that you pull for a character and then you get their best move. Like for example, it can be the E2 or E1 or whatever it is. And then you pull for their light cone, you pull for also you also pull for their support, and you also do the same for them. Like for example, if a support has a broken E1, then you're gonna be picking that E1, and you might pick their light cone too if it's a broken light cone. And then you do the same for the whole team. So this is why it's called vertical investment. So it goes in a straight line. Like when you pull a character or a team, then you keep investing more into it. Like you don't go into the next team. You just keep spending more pools, and like the team cost is very high for one team. Unlike other teams, like the cost can be like maybe even 4 costs or whatever. But in vertical investments, like the cost is very high. Like a team can be like 15 costs. And by the way, cost is basically the number of 5 stars there are. It's that simple. Like for example, each 5-star you pull, it's a 1 cost. Like for example, if you pull for 2 5-stars, that's 2 costs. And also if you pull for like E1, that E1 also cost is counted as a cost. For example, an E1 character, it's counted as 2 costs, because the E0 is 1 cost, the E1 is also another cost. That's 2 costs. So these costs don't really matter in the game. This is just things that the community uses when you, like, for example, looking for showcases. You're going to be seeing, oh, this is a 8-cost team. So this is just to give you an idea. But it doesn't really matter much into the game itself. But yeah, vertical investments is the high-cost teams. You pull and invest more into the team to make it stronger and reach like the highest power level for that team. And now I'm going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of each one. So for horizontal investment, so what makes it good? Horizontal investment basically allows you to pull for the new characters. So when you pull a new character or a new team, for example, right now we're in Plan Arcadia. Plan Arcadia right now is heavily shilling the Elation teams. So right now, if you have an Elation team and you pull the team, even at E0, like that team is going to be performing significantly better compared to the other teams that released like in the previous updates, in the previous regions. So horizontal investments is good because it allows you to stay up to date with the content that is shilled at the moment in the region. This is why it's good. But the inconvenience of horizontal investments is because it's so hard to keep up with it, because obviously you're not going to be able to pull for every single character in the game, right? If you are free to play. This video is going to be mainly about free to play. I'm not going to be talking if you're aware. If you're aware, you probably don't even need to watch this video. But horizontal investments is something that normal player cannot keep up with, because you have to pull for each team and for each support and for each character, and it's not realistic. It's not possible. This is why it's so hard. Like horizontal investments are so hard. But I would say horizontal investments are good for people who are like light spenders. For example, if you're not a heavyweight, maybe you just spend $100, $200 in the game per month or per update, then pulling for each character can be realistic. If you know that you can afford pulling for each character, then I would actually recommend going for horizontal investments, because that will allow you to comfortably clear content. Like for example, right now in the game, in the current update that we're having, there are some people who are clearing the Anomaly King stage in 0 cycle with an E0 Civil War, like the new Civil War that we just got, the 999. So that team, even at a very low cost, it can still clear in 0 cycle that Anomaly stage that older teams that have higher investments can't do. But the issue with horizontal investments, and why I think it's a trap, is because it's not future-proof. What this means is that the characters, when you pull for a character right now in a team that, like, for example, if you put the Silver Wolf or the Evanesia team, you might get the impression that it's the most broken team in the game. But that's not really the truth. They just look broken because the current environment in the game is shielded and catered towards those characters, and they make them look better than what they are. For example, there are a lot of the buffs in Anomaly and in Purification and whatever other content. They have more advantages for those teams. This is why the teams might look better than what they actually are. But in the future, like for example, if you go like 6 months in the future, or maybe even the next region, that E0 team that you are using right now comfortably will be struggling a lot in the future. To give you an example for this, for example, back when in 3.0, when Amphorius released, we got the Herta. The Herta at that time was like the queen of pure fiction. Even at E0, the Herta could clear it comfortably without any issues. But right now, an E0, the Herta is struggling so hard. Even, like for me, I do have the Herta, but I don't have an E2 for her. I don't have like her, like very invested team in her. And now I'm struggling to like even get the max score with the Herta, compared to before where I was able to get the max score. So This is what's like the trap about horizontal events. It's not future proof. Like the team that you're using right now, if you have an E0 team right now, it might look good right now, but in the future, it won't be. Just so that you know. As for the vertical investment, it's quite the opposite. Like, so vertical investment basically allows your character to stay more relevant, even if they are weak, even if they are old characters. Like, they can still keep up with the meta. For example, for me, the characters that I invested in are Jingliu, Acheron, and Phainon. These are the characters that you see that I have at E6 right now. But I'm also very invested in the support. Like, for example, Hyacinth, Sunday, and Sparkle. Like, these are like the main support that all of these three main DPSs that I have uses. So vertical investments allows your character to perform about the same as the current characters that are in the meta. And the more you invest in your characters, the more they're gonna be good. One catch is that some of the older characters, like maybe the 1.x characters and even some of the 2.x characters, like for example Feixiao and some other characters, those characters were a bit weird. So you have to keep in mind that back when the game released, some characters had a lot of janky kills. Like the game was still new at that time. Like the game didn't have like the foundation on how to like properly balance the characters. Some like characters like Jingliu, like she could have used a lot of things. If she like, for example, if Jingliu released now, she would have a lot of things that could offset her weaknesses compared to when she released back in the days. This is why some characters, like for example, Phainon, performs better than Jingliu, even though my Jingliu has more investment to her in her. But if I use like a worse team for my Phainon compared to Jingliu, my Phainon will still perform better. This is like the thing about the older characters, like the 1.x characters and the newer ones. But if you invested, like for example, in the 3.0 characters, then those characters are going to be really good. Like even some of the Penaconic characters, like for example, I do have an E2 Firefly, and E2 Firefly got a lot of buffs recently with the Dahlia and the Nova Flare. I will get into those later in the video, but some of those can be good. But in my opinion, like characters like Feixiao, even though I love Feixiao a lot, but she's starting to fall off in the meta. So if you want to, if you like Feixiao, for example, feel free to invest in her. Like as long as you properly invest in her, then she's gonna be good. But if you have a choice between, for example, Feixiao or Ashveil, which I don't have right now, it's better to invest in Ashveil, obviously. And this is where I'm gonna be giving my verdict on whether you should do horizontal and vertical investment. In my opinion, I do think vertical investment is much better. And this is especially true if you are a free-to-play or if you have favorite characters. Like, if you have a favorite team or a favorite character, then it's better to just keep investing in that team. Because, like I said, Honkai Star Rail has a lot of traps. If you just keep pulling for different characters, if you are free-to-play and just keep pulling for new characters, obviously it's going to be hard for you to catch up and pull for everyone. And by the time, like for example, if you ended up skipping like a character and then you want to pull for their reruns, so by the time the character get their rerun, they might be starting to phase out a little bit of the meta. Because you know at that time there's going to be a newer team that will be performing better, and then you might be wanting to pull for that team, and the cycle goes on. Like the team is only at its peak when it's new, when it's just released. But when the characters or when the teams get the reruns, at that time you know that there's going to be more characters that are going to be even better than them, that the current environment will be shielded and favor them more. But for investment, for vertical investments, you don't really need to worry about that. Like I said before, my Jingliu, like I still use her to this day to 0 cycle or 1 cycle content with her comfortably without any issues. And she's still, despite her being very old character, and I mean very old both in lore and in game, because she released in like 1.4 I believe, and like she has a lot of junk in her kit. There's a lot of things that I would like to change in her kit if I could if I could do it. But yeah, and this is where I feel like if you even invested in a 2.x character, then they were going to be much stronger than my Jingliu. Like Jingliu is very weak compared for now, and this is, I'm saying this as someone who really loves her. Like Jingliu, like you might say like she's my favorite, or what people say my waifu. But yeah, so for if you have a favorite character or favorite team, I would recommend to keep investing in them. It's much better than just keep pulling for a, and I mean, like I said, in both their dupes and also their support. Like the main reason why I put for E2, for example, Hyacinth, is just because I know she's going to be glued to Jingliu for like the rest of the game's lifespan, because she's basically made for her. She has a lot of things that she synergizes with her. maybe I'll get into more in details when I get into the second part of the video. But yeah, in my opinion, vertical investment is more important compared to horizontal, because horizontal is only good for people who can afford spending and for people maybe who don't really care about the meta or anything. But if you want to keep your favorite character relevant and future proof, then it's better to invest vertically. That's going to be like the main conclusion from all of this. And now into the second part of the video, which is going to be managing gear and how to upgrade it and what are the pieces that you should be upgrading. So like I said earlier, I am kind of obsessed when it comes to min-maxing my characters and gear, like not just in Honkai Star Rail, but in every other game that I play. This is the reason why I have like the rank 1 Jingliu in the world, and some of my other characters like Phainon and Acheron also have some really insane build. The things that I'm going to be touching on this part are going to be like, so first of all, I'm going to be starting what pieces that you should keep. So you pull a character, right? First of all, you have to identify which set they use. The best way to do this, like you can look it up online, and some guys, there's always going to be people who are discussing this. This is very easy. Or even if you don't want to do that, you can just come here in the recommendation and you can check which one you can use from here. Most of the time these are accurate, like you can trust these. Like if you don't know what you should be using, you can just trust these and use the whatever the set that has the higher percentages. Like those sets, like the objective better ones for them. Like for example, if you see a Phainon, this is like gonna be 99% of the time this is the set that you're gonna be using, except if you have like some really garbage subsets in this and you have a better set in here that has better stats. But most of the time, like the sets that are in here are going to be the best in slot. So this is the first thing that you have to look up for when it comes to getting the character. So the next thing that you want to do then is know which pieces that you have to keep. Of course, every character is going to be built different. For example, the way you build a DPS is not going to be the same way that you build a support or a sustainer. This is why you have to identify which subsets that character needs. For example, let's say you're building a crit DPS. A crit DPS obviously needs crit rate and crit damage, right? So if you pull a piece, you have to look up if they have these two subsets at the bare minimum. Like ideally, like even if you are just building a character, you don't really want a piece that only has crit rate and the other subsets, like for example HP defense, flat HP, or some subsets that you don't need. Honestly, I don't recommend upgrading those, and don't waste your time on them. That's because especially if you're a beginner or like in the mid game, you're not going to have enough resources to keep upgrading every piece that you get. You're just going to be wasting your resources for nothing, and you're not, by the time you get like maybe a piece that you like, you're not even gonna have resources. For me, for example, I can afford doing that because I'm already in the end game. I have tons of resources, tons of credits, etc. But if you are still starting, then you only want to upgrade the pieces that have at least two subsets that you need. For example, crit DPS, you need at least crit rate and crit damage. And from then on, like for example, once you get a double crit piece, then you can start looking for a piece that has three subsets that you want, and then for stats, like for example, like me in here. So, for example, like I don't know if I have any like example that I can show you in here. Let me see. So, okay, so for example, for this, like you see here, like I have crit rate and crit DPS, right? So, what do you want to do? Like, okay, you got the two subsets that you got. First thing that you want to do is see how the other rolls gonna go. Like for example, if you go here, the first thing that's going to happen, I'm going to be talking about the 4 lines and 3 lines later. Like now I unlock the crit rate, right? So next thing you're going to be doing is upgrade. Like for example here, it's rolling crit rate. That's good. It means that you want to keep going. Now you're going to go again. You see where it's going to roll. That's also good. It's rolling crit rate. This, like for example, this piece is looking promising. Like it's already 2 pieces. So if you are a new player, you're only going to be satisfied with this piece because at least it has 2 rolls in the substat that you want. And then you roll, and then it's rolling crit damage. This is actually this is actually really good now. Like this is in like usable territory. And then you're gonna roll again. If it goes like crit damage, then it's really good. Of course, it's got in defense because that's how RNG goes. But for example, if you're an early game, like early or mid game, this is a good piece for you. Like you can straight up use this because it's got the substat. But let's say, for example, when you roll this at first, like the first roll went in crit rate, and then the second roll went to defense. you might try to go up to +9 and upgrade it, like, and see if it's gonna roll in crit rate and crit damage. But if at that time it doesn't roll like in crit rate and crit damage, I would say to just abandon that case, because at that time the risk is much higher compared to the cost. Like, you're gonna, because you have to keep in mind, when you're upgrading a piece, the cost keeps increasing the more you upgrade it. For example, going from plus 12 to +15 costs way more to go than going from 0 to +12, or maybe it's about the same. But yeah, like, you have to keep this in mind. The more you upgrade, the more resources you have to spend in them. So if your piece is not shaping up to be a good piece, it's better to leave it in mid upgrades. You don't have to go all the way up. But if you get, like, for example, in the early game, if you get at least 2 rolls in the substats that you want, then I would say that's a usable piece. You can use it. But other than that, if you only have 1 roll, it's not really worth keeping. I would say there is one exception, and that's with the body piece. So the body piece is going to be the piece that you want the main stats to be the crit stat. It can be either crit rate or it can be crit damage, right? So if you get this piece, then you can maybe afford having only one substat. Like, for example, if you're using a crit rate, you can only have crit damage as the only substat that you want, and it can be fine, right? Even if you don't have the stat that the character scales off, like attack percent or HP percent for HP scalers. Yeah, like for these pieces, like, you can afford having this. Like, for example, crit damage, you can only have crit rate, like, as the only substat, like for here. Like, this piece, I'm not satisfied with this piece. I would never use this piece. But if you're in the early game, then you can't really be picky with what you use. Like, you just have to use whatever substat that you get, and that's pretty much it. Of course, you still need at least, like, for example, 2 rolls in here in the crit stat that you want. But anyway, this is all an example for, like, crit DPSs. Of course, every character needs specific substats. The best way that you can know which substats a character needs, you can just look at the gear and you can see, like, the highlighted stats here. Like, for example, Hysilens needs speed and HP. Great damage is kind of optional depending on how much damage you want her to do. But anyway, you can always view which substats the character needs from these substats, like the highlighted substats in here. Like, you see this one, like, for example, if I go here, like, you see these 3 are highlighted, but this one is not. But technically she kind of need a flat HP. But yeah, like, for example, Jingliu, she scales off HP, so she doesn't need attack. So you see here, she's not, like, it's not very highlighted. This is how you can know which substat a character needs. Like, for example, a break DPS doesn't need crit rate, right? They don't really care about crit rate or crit damage. They only care about the break stat. And for example, DPS, she needs also attack percent. Every character scales off something, and you just, like, have to know what. Like, for example, this is a support. They need effect hit rate. Not a support, I mean debuffer. Well, they're technically a support too. But yeah, he needs a effect hit rate and so on. Like, every character needs a specific substat. You just have to identify. This is the best way to know what substat the character needs. And the final section of this part is gonna be how to reroll substats with the dice system that we have, and also what are the 3 and 4 liners that I talked about earlier. Let's start with the 3 and 4 liners, for example. When you get a piece of gear, there's a chance that it will either have 3 substats like this, or it can have 4 substats like this. This is +0, right? So what's so special about 3 and 4 liners? 4 liners are always better. The reason is because 4 liners, you don't have to waste a roll to unlock the 4th substat after upgrading it to +3. Because the thing is, with 3 liners, for example, this is a +0 piece, right? It only has 3 substats. We call them 3 liners because they start with 3 lines of substats. So with these 3 liners, you have to upgrade it to +3 to just unlock the final substat, like here, for example. Like, you see, now I unlock the breaks, like the break effect. This piece is garbage, but I'm just showing you for, like, the sake of, just to show you what I mean. So this is a 3 liners that after you upgrade it to +3, you unlock the 4th substat. And then from here on, you start upgrading the substat. So this is where you start upgrading the substat. Like, here it went to break effect. What this means is that 3 liners have a wasted roll, because you only get to roll after +3. But the 4 liners are different, because you can start rolling in the substats right from +0. So you get an extra roll technically. So here, when you upgrade to +3, you already start getting these rolls in the substats, unlike the 3 liners. This is the difference between the 3 and 4 liners. Typically you always want to four liners, but this is not realistic. Of course, a lot of people only like get to the three liners because the four liners have more chances to roll into the subsets that you want. Like instead of only getting four chances, you get five chances with the four liners because you get five more upgrades. So yeah, the four liners are better when it comes to min maxing. But honestly, the four liners and three liners is just something that you have to think about much later. Like if you're just starting the game or if you're mid game, then you don't really have to care about. Like beggars can't be choosers. Like you just, if as long as you get like two or three rolls in the subset that you want, then you're gonna be happy. This is just for people who really want to min max. Like this is something that I did for my Jingliu and some other characters. But yeah, this is something like that you should know because this is gonna be leading me to my next point, which is the rolling system, like the dice system. So in Honkai Star Rail we have these items called the dice. What this dice basically does is that it rerolls the subsets that you have. When you press reroll, it's gonna, by the way, you can choose which subsets you reroll. They are random. So it's like it upgrades from 0 to plus 15 all over again, but like you only see the results. So when you reroll, you're gonna be presented with two screens, like the one that you had already and the new rolls. If you're satisfied with the new roll, then you're going to be accepting it and get it. But if you're not satisfied, then you can still keep the previous piece you have. So technically there is no risk in using it because you can still keep the piece that you want. But like I said, you use this to reroll the substat that you want, but you don't have any control over it. But like I said earlier, you have to know which pieces to use in all. For example, you don't want to use this on the three liners. The reason because when it rerolls based on which type of liners it was. So for three liners, it's only gonna reroll four times. Like you're only gonna get four upgrades, right? For example, this piece is a four liner, three liner, then you don't want to use it on this one. And by the way, you can tell whether a piece is three liner or four liner by looking at these numbers in here. For example, this piece, it says two rolls in here and two rolls in here. So this was three liners because they had only four rolls. But like if I go, for example, to this piece, then it has 3, 1, 1, so it's 5. So 5 rolls means it was a 4 liners. And these are the pieces that you want to use the dice rerolls for. Because 4 liners, you get more chances when it rerolls. So you have more chances to land on the substats that you want. Of course, it's not guaranteed. Like, of course, like for all you know, it might go like 4 attack and then like 1 break and none of them go into crit rate or crit damage. This is like very common. But like I said, the more you minimize your RNG, the better. So this is why you should only use it on the 4 liners, not the 3 liners. And also, ideally, you want to use it on the pieces that have like more subsets that you want. Like for example, in this piece, it has attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage. So technically, this is a good piece that to reroll. I say technically because this piece is a 3 liner. It's not a 4 liner, so I'm not going to be using it on this. But if this was like a 4 liners, then I would definitely like reroll this piece. It's a good piece to reroll, but unfortunately it's a 3 liner, so like this piece is very garbage for my standards at least. Like for example, I'm not really satisfied with this piece. I'm trying to like farm a new one for right now, but I don't have any luck. But anyway, but yeah, to sum it up, you only want to use the dice on the 4 liners and on the pieces that have at least 2 subsets, ideally 3 subsets that you want. Because like I said, these dices are very hard to get. Like you only get some very limited amounts of them, and like you have to use them responsibly. You can't just throw them like anywhere on any piece that just because you don't like it. Like you have to use it on very specific pieces. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything there is to say about gearing system. I think I covered everything that is important. And if you have any questions, then feel free to ask me in the comments. And now for probably the biggest part of the video, where I'll be showing you what are the best investments and characters to pull for each team in the whole game, for each team and archetype. And by the way, just a disclaimer, this is not a tier list. Like, I know I'm making it on the tier maker, but this is just because I don't know any other website that I can use it where I can showcase the text and the characters like illustrations in here. Like, I don't know any. Like, this is not in order and this is not a tier list. I repeat, this is not a tier list. Break DPS does not mean that they are better than Dot or Follow Up or anything. Like this is just the best way that I could find to present my idea and my points, because I couldn't find any otherwise. And by the way, if anyone has any website that they know where I can have like a proper presentation of this character, then feel free to let me know, because I tried to look up some, but I couldn't find anywhere. But anyway, this is an important disclaimer because I don't want people to jump in here and think this is a tier list. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's jump into it. The first team that I'm going to be talking about is the break teams. So when it comes to break teams, I'm going to divide it into two parts, like the break DPSs. If you want to play a deep break team, then you have the choice between three DPSs, and that's Firefly, Boothill, and Rappa. These are the three main premium DPS break DPSs that you can have. So I know some people will be telling me, but there's this and that and that. Technically, there are some other characters that can play as break DPSs. The best example would be Himeko and Lingsha. I know some people use those teams for like as the break DPS, but those teams are not really designed to be break DPSs like these teams. Like these three characters have things in their kit that only triggers when they break the when they break the enemies. So these teams, these three are more designed for as a break DPS compared to the other characters. Like for example, Himeko, I know she can be used as a break DPS. I know people use Lingsha to be a break DPS too. Yes, I know all of that. But like I said, like this is for more like optimized teams. So if you want to build an optimized break DPS team, then these three are going to be your choice. If you have to choose one of these, then Firefly by a large margin. Firefly has not only gotten a Nova Flare, but she also got a support, where I'll be talking about here, who elevated her to be top tier again. Because Firefly, when she released, she was broken. But then after Amphorius and after the power creep that we had, she started falling off. But then one of the supports I'm going to be talking here elevated her more to be top tier. And then, as if that was not enough, she also got a buff. Like Firefly, like even pre her buff, I would say Firefly was the most broken out of all of these three characters. Like, well, not broken, but she was better. She was more comfortable to use compared to these two, compared to Rappa and Boothill. But after the buffs that she had, and after like the character support that she got, like she became super good right now. Like she's top tier. Like she's back to be top tier. Boothill and Rappa are also good. Like don't get me wrong, they're also good, but like I'm saying, if you only have the choice of one of these, then you can use Firefly. But you can also use Boothill and Rappa, even though right now they're not like top tier. Like there's a lot of better characters compared to them, but they are still usable. If you invest in them, they can still be good. And now for the break support. So I'm gonna be straight up for you. If you wanna be playing break, your highest priority should be the Dahlia. The Dahlia saved break the way that she couldn't save her father. Because the Dahlia, when she released, she basically brought back break from the dead. And like I said before, even Firefly, despite how broken she is, even though I had her like at E2, but she was not really that good anymore. She was starting phasing out of the meta. People were not really using her, and break as a whole was getting very weak. But then the Dahlia released and she saved it in like no other character saved their like well, there is one other character that saved their archetype, which I'll be talking about, but the Dahlia, like I would say the Dahlia is the most broken niche support we have in the game. This is why you're going to be seeing some people see that is this support the Dahlia of this archetype, because the Dahlia is like what people now reference for every other archetype nowadays. She is that good. Like the Dahlia should be your biggest, highest priority if you want to play break. She is super good, and she especially has a great synergy with Firefly. In fact, like it feels like the Dahlia was specifically made for Firefly. Like even though Boothill and Rappa were well kind of comparatively weaker compared to Firefly, and they needed help more than the Firefly, but the Dahlia still ended up benefiting Firefly even more. She has some, I'm not gonna go into details, like it is not in-depth review. I'm just gonna briefly telling you why characters are good, but the Dahlia has some parts on her passive that only work with fire breaks. And the only fire break that we have is Firefly. So yeah, they might as well change that sentence, you know, to like, if Firefly is in the team, you do this and that. Like I said, I can't emphasize enough how important the Dahlia is for break. If you want to play break, make sure to get the Dahlia. Period. And after the Dahlia, actually your options start becoming more flexible, because the Dahlia is always going to be glued in your break team. Other than that, you have a lot more options. So I'll talk briefly about each one of them. So the first one is going to be HMC, like Harmony MC, which is free to get. Harmony, I would say Harmony MC is probably one of the biggest increase in DPS that you can give your break DPS. They have a lot of buffs that you can provide to your like DPS. They have an insane multipliers when it comes to the super break, and they're free. So you can just use them like as long as you play the game, you can always use them. Your next option is also going to be Ruan Mei. Ruan Mei is technically free. Like you can get her from the Golden Shop, you know, the Golden Nugget Shop. And if you already started the game, even if you started in this update, I'm recording by the way this in 4.2. So if you started in 4.2, we already got a free one when they added Robin and HuoHuo in the shop. So you can use Ruan Mei. Ruan Mei, what makes her really good? So Ruan Mei, she's kind of a generalist support. When she released, she was used with many teams, and even now you can use her with any team. But what really makes her good for break is not only because of her buffs, but also because of her break efficiency. What's break efficiency is basically it makes your characters break the toughness bars faster. She has a 50% increase in break efficiency, so she provides 50% more damage to the break bar. This is why you see people use Ruan Mei. And this is also like one of your next best options in terms of DPS. So, for example, let's say you want to play a break team, like a sustainless break team, like a team that has no sustain, no heal, no anything. If you want to use, for example, Firefly, this is the team that I personally use too. You will use Firefly with the Dahlia with HMC and Ruan Mei. This is going to be your go-to if you want to get as much damage as possible, because this is the only good buffers that you can get. The other options that I'm going to be talking about are more for comfort. Some of them, well, like, for example, the next one is going to be Fugue that I'm going to be talking about. Fugue, what she has two things. She does defense break for the enemies, but her main gimmick is the fact that she gave like something that we call exo toughness. So exo toughness, you can just think of it like a second bar of the toughness bar, but that one has less resistance compared to the previous one, so it breaks faster. And you might be wondering why the hell would I give like the enemies double break bars? You would do that because, like I said, the break DPSs benefit more from breaking the toughness bars of the bosses. Like, let's say, for example, Firefly. For Firefly, you want to get, like, for her E2, like, if you get her E2, every time she breaks the bar, then she gets an extra turn. And that bar, second bar that Fugue gives also counts towards that. So, yeah, this is why it's good. Boothill also has a passive that's only procs after you break. So, this is something that is very common. And break in general, like the whole concept of break as an archetype, is that the break damage increases the more you break the toughness of the enemy. So when you break the toughness of an enemy, you do a certain amount of damage to them. And this is why Fugue is good, because that second toughness bar that she gives, she helps the break DPSs more. She also has a super break multiplier, but its multiplier is lower than HMC. So like I said, if you want DPS, HMC is better than Fugue, even though Fugue like is a gacha only, but I personally prefer HMC compared to Fugue. But this is just my own preference. Like, you might like Fugue more. And the other two options are the Sustains. The Sustains are basically Lingsha and Gallagher. So back then, like, a lot of people used to say that Gallagher is like better than Lingsha. Some people say Lingsha is better. And it just depends on the way you want to look at it, because like Gallagher is a 4 stars and Lingsha is a 5 stars. So it depends on like your priorities, because like, do you want to use a 5-star pool to get a healer that does almost the same thing as Gallagher, or you want a Lingsha who has more comforts when it comes to him? Because Lingsha heals better, but she also has a debuff in her ult that makes the enemy gets more increased break damage. And like I said, she has better healing overall compared to Gallagher. But Gallagher is also free, and Lingsha is only a side grade to Gallagher. So like I said, it's only a matter of preference. Personally, I do have Lingsha. I use her sometimes if I do need a sustainer. But like, if you don't really, like, if you're very tight on pools, then you might skip Lingsha and get Gallagher instead. Like, you can't go wrong with that. And the last honorable mention I'm gonna be bringing up is Himeko. Well, Himeko is technically like a DPS. Like I said before, Lingsha and Himeko can be used as a break DPSs. But like I said, Himeko is mainly going to be carried by the Dahlia. Like I said, Dahlia is going to be carrying everyone in here. But because, like I said, the Dahlia, she has the mechanic in her kit that makes her ignore the break conditions. So Himeko can be used very well with the Dahlia. But she is like not really as good as like the dedicated break DPSs. So I just put her in here, but like I said, she is technically a DPS. But like I said, I'm just including her because she's an honorable mention. But yeah, like, these are your like break options when it comes to the break archetypes. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. This is gonna be regarding Firefly. So if you wanna invest in Firefly, I would highly recommend getting her E2. So her E2, like I said earlier, allows her to get an extra turn when she breaks a toughness bar. And this is so insanely good for her DPS. Like, it basically doubles the amount of damage that she can do, like her overall DPS. I would say in terms of priorities, if you want to play Firefly, your highest priority should be, of course, the Dahlia before anything else, and then investing in each of Firefly before you pull any of the other characters. You should always prioritize putting. I don't really encourage putting 4 characters. I don't really think there are any must pulls, but I would say Firefly E2 is like one of the closest things to a must pull there is in the game. There is 2 eidolons that I recommend in the game. One of them is Firefly and the other one I'm going to be mentioning. So yeah, if you want to play Firefly, I would highly recommend getting an E2. Her E2 is absolutely insane, because even prior to her E2, her E1 also makes her skill that not consuming like SP, skill points, and this is also good in Break, because Break is kind of hungry when it comes to SP, so getting her E2 gives you a lot of comfort. And after her buffs, her E2 is even more broken, because before then, her E2 only procs every other turn. So one turn it procs, and the other one it doesn't. But now her E2 procs every turn. So as long as you can break the the toughness, you can get an extra turn every turn. Like, it's insane. Like, Firefly E2 is absolutely absurd. If you're not playing E2 Firefly, you're gonna be missing out on a lot. So yeah, I highly recommend getting her E2. This is something that I forgot to mention. I only realized after, so this is why I'm making a quick disclaimer about it. Okay, so next up is Dot. Dot is damage over time. Unlike Break, your options in Dot are a bit limited. In fact, you don't even have any options, because you're only going to be using one team if you're going to be using Dot. And the core characters of that team is basically going to be our mother, Kafka, and the other 2 lesbians. So these 3 characters, Black Swan and Hysilens, by the way. So these 3 characters are the most important and the core characters for Dot. Like, if you don't have any of these characters, well, you can argue if you don't have Black Swan, then maybe, but honestly, like, in the current meta, especially right now, maybe if this was like last year, then yeah, sure. But like right now, you really need these 3 characters all together if you want Dot to perform good, like at least on par with some of the modern teams. Dot is a weird archetype, because back when Black Swan released in 2.0, I think Dot was a really good archetype. It was like one of the best scenes. The Kafka and Black Swan team was one of the best scenes in 2.0. But then after that, Dot started dying more and more, and this was pretty much forgotten. That was until Hysilens released, and you can think of Hysilens like kind of like the Dahlia of Break. Although the Dahlia is more impactful, but Hysilens still saved the Dot archetype. She was really good, and she basically brought back the archetype back to life. And this was further after like the Black Swan buffs, because Black Swan got a buff in January, and now Dot is really good and competitive with the other archetypes, because Dot was really bad for like 1.5 years straight. They were very forgotten. But yeah, these 3 characters are like the best and the most core characters in the Dot team. Kafka especially, because Kafka, what she does is that she procs the dots on the enemies. So like, you know, how Dot works, not just in Honkai Star, but in video games in general, is that the enemies take damage over time. In turn-based games, they take damage when they get their turn, right? So what Kafka does is that she makes the enemy take the Dot damage that they were gonna take on their turn, but on her turn instead. So she procs the Dot. And Black Swan and Hysilens, they have a lot of debuffs and buffs that increase further amplify the Dot damage. So after that, you have like 2 options for like the 4th slot. You either have Ruan Mei if you want to play Sustainless. Ruan Mei, of course, amplifies the damage. And you have HuoHuo if you want like a sustain option. HuoHuo also got a buff this update. It's kind of okay, because now she has 3 charges in her passive, unlike True, so she is less SP hungry, but kinda not. But anyway, I'm not gonna go into details of her boss. But the other thing about HuoHuo is that she also gives energy, and the energy helps a lot, especially Black Swan and Kafka, because Kafka, when she ults, she gets a certain charge in her passive that allows her to proc one more follow-up, and that follow-up now after her buff, she can proc the dots on the enemies. So yeah, you can get an idea about how the team works together. Ruan Mei is generally like, like I said, if you want to play Sustainless, you want to run Ruan Mei with the other 3. If you want to play a sustained team, then you use HuoHuo with the other 3. Like that's pretty much all of your options. I don't really want to mention this option, but you kind of have like Sampo and Guinefin. But these options are very outdated. Like these are the teams that people used when the game released. But nowadays, I don't think it's even worth mentioning because those characters are only 4 stars and they don't really do anything other than just inflicting the debuffs. But they don't provide anything like Hysilens and Black Swan. So yeah, this is the only team and the premium team when it comes to dots. The next archetype is gonna be FUA. So FUA is follow-up attacks. Follow-up attacks are the extra attacks that the characters do, like outside of their turn or when certain conditions are met. Follow-up attacks though is in a weird spot right now. So remember what I said about Break and Dot where they were weak and all of that? Well, follow-up attacks are kinda in that spot now. They desperately need some help. Well, except for last update. So last update we got a character, and that's Ashveil. Ashveil right now is good. I would say Ashveil is like the best thing that you can pull right now for FUA. Ashveil is more of a modern character. He has great damage, good follow-up attack frequency, and he has a lot of buffs for him and for the team. But the thing is, a lot of teams want Ashveil, but Ashveil don't want a lot of those teams because those teams, all what they do is that they hold him down. But let me explain this properly. So when it comes to follow-up attacks, a lot of characters have synergy between them. Like each one proc the other and the other proc the other one, and you keep attacking the character, the enemies more and more. This is one of the main gimmicks of follow-up attacks. So in your mind, you would think, okay, if you want to use Ashveil, you might want to use a sub DPS with him. And that's true. Like for example, one of the teams that you can use with Ashveil is going to be, for example, Feixiao. Feixiao is like, back then before Ashveil, she was like the premium follow-up attack DPS. But nowadays, Feixiao, like I said previously in the video, she started firing off. She is kind of good, but like not as good as Ashveil. Like if you can have the choice between only one of them, then you're definitely gonna go with Ashveil. But the thing is, if you want to use Ashveil, it's better to use him with as a hyper carry than use him as a sub DPS with another character, because the amount of damage that Ashveil does is much higher. So for example, if you're going to be building a Ashveil team, you're going to be using like the other crit support like Sunday, Sparkle, and like Tribbie. So I'm going to be talking about those characters. In fact, let me talk about them right now. Okay, let's say you want to play Ashveil in his optimal team. His optimal team is basically just going to be a support. It's going to be Sunday, Tribbie, and Sparkle. This is the team that you are most likely going to be running for it. Even though this kind of goes against like what follow-up do, but because of the other follow-up attacks are like not really that great, like there really is not much for him like to benefit from the other characters. If anything, like the DPS of the team is just going to be 10k down if you use him with like Feixiao or Topaz or one of the other characters I'm going to be mentioning in here. But these three, because they are all harmony, they are all like supports, they're gonna just keep increasing his damage more, and they also he gets more actions because Sunday and Sparkle are action advancer. Tribbie has also follow-up attacks, and she also will be doing like triggering more of those follow-up attacks the more your team's ult. So yeah, like this team is currently like the best follow-up team, even though this is technically not really a follow-up team, it's just a hyper carry, but because Ashveil acts like a follow-up DPS. So yeah, this is why I'm including. This is just a separate list I'm going to be using for Ashveil specifically. And here I'm going to be talking about the rest of the other follow-up attacks. Just keep in mind that Ashveil can work with all of the characters I'm going to be talking about in here. This is just a keep. But the other characters not necessarily, because if you're going to be using Ashveil with, for example, Feixiao, then you only have spot for 2 more. And that spot is most likely going to be either Tribbie with Sparkle, and Tribbie is almost going to always stay. But yeah, like the other options, I can use whichever you want. But yeah, your next options in follow-up attacks, I just kept Ashveil here just for people like to keep it in mind. So your next options is going to be maybe Feixiao like as a second, like the second DPS with Ashveil. And honestly, the other options that I'm going to be talking about, the other sub DPSs in follow-up attacks, are kind of copium nowadays, and that's Moze and Topaz. So I'm going to be honest, there really is not much. Well, Moze is at 4 stars, like you're not really wasting anything. You might have already have him by now if you put on any of the bands, because we don't really get 4 stars anymore in Honkai Star Rail, so it's just the same 4 stars, let's keep recycling. But anyway, and Topaz you can get her for free from the golden shop that I mentioned earlier too. I'm going to be honest, like there's not really much reason for you to invest in these two. it's better to, if you really want to use a sub DPS to like sub DP in with Ashveil, then it's better to use Feixiao. And these two, like, they are super outdated nowadays. And the other support that I forgot to mention is Robin. So Robin back then, she was like the premium follow-up DP support, like before we got Sunday or anything. She has something in her like kit that specifically buffs the follow-up damage. So she's kind of an budget option, and she's also free from the Golden Nugget shop. So, like for example, if you don't have, I don't know, Tribbie, you can substitute Tribbie for Robin. But yeah, these are the like main like follow-up characters. Technically, I'm kind of hesitant about Ratio, because Ratio is a bit weird where he needs the debuffs in the enemies to proc his follow-up, and his follow-ups are not like as frequent as the others. I'm just gonna be mentioning him as an honorable mention. Don't like, he's not as good like as Topaz or Feixiao, but he's kind of a follow-up DPS, so I'm gonna include him in here too. But yeah, this is for the follow-ups. Like I said, there's not really many like modern characters used for this scheme. Maybe in Plan Arcadia we're gonna be getting more supports and more sub DPSs who synergize well with Ashveil, because I have a feeling, I already said this in my Honkai Star Rail review, but I have a feeling that Ashveil is gonna get better teammates, maybe better sub DPS who will replace Feixiao, and better supports than maybe Tribbie. So the next list is gonna be for the crit DPS supports. What I mean by crit DPSs are the, you know, like the traditional crit carries, like for example Acheron, Phainon, Jingliu, like all of the characters who just do like regular crit DPS, the traditional crit DPSs. Unlike, for example, Break or Dot, the crit DPSs are just characters who straight do like a crit damage. That's it. This is gonna be a list about what are the best supports. So your highest priorities are going to be Sparkle and Sunday. These two are like the premium crit DPSs right now. You can never go wrong with these two in your team if you're using a traditional crit DPS. So before her buff, I would say Sunday was better than Sparkle. Sparkle, in fact, she was kind of getting really bad. But after her buff, like after Sparkle's buff, she became significantly better now compared to Sunday. Like, she is now so insane. I would say Spark is like one of the best supports in the game right now, mainly because of the fact that she can like support many teams. Like, she doesn't only have one team. Like, if you want to use her with Acheron, you slam her in Acheron, you slam her with Ashveil, you slam her with a lot of crit DPS. But yeah, Sparkle is good. She also has like she's also good because her main gimmick is that she gives SP, skill points. So on her ult, she gives 4 skill points, and she also increases the max cap of your skill points. So on average, it's like on normal your max cap is 5, but with Sparkle she increases that cap to 7, and I think it's 8 with her one of her Eidolon. I think it's her E4 or E6, I can't remember. But anyway, her Sparkle main gimmick is that she gives SP. On top of that, she also gives a lot of buffs to your hyper carry, which is the crit DPS, and she also action action advance them. But unlike Sunday, Sparkle's action advance is only 50%. So if your DPS is very far in the action bar, like if they're very like down below, then she's not going to be immediately guaranteeing them an action. Unlike Sunday, who gives 100% action advance. So I would say this is her only drawback. Like, she doesn't immediately give like an extra turn to your DPS. But other than that, she has everything like that you want from a crit support. She even her buffs, like after her buffs, before her like the buffs that she gave only lasted for 1 turn. But nowadays, after her Nova Flare, her buffs now last for 2 turns, which is really good. The reason this is good is because before then, her buffs couldn't overlap with Sunday. So if you push your DPS with Sparkle and they get their turn, they consume those buffs, and by the time Sunday buff that character, then Sparkle's buffs are no more because they only last for 1 turn. But now, because they last for 2 turns and Sunday's buffs also last 2 turns, those buffs both are always overlapping. And this is really good when it comes to crit DPS. So every time you, not only do you push your crit hyper carry, but your crit hyper carry also has 2 buffs from 2 different supports at the same time. This is really like insane. And the Sunday's main strength is that, like I said earlier, is that he gives 100% action advance. So if Sunday uses a skill on your crit DPS, That crit DPS gets you turned immediately right after Sunday. The other strength for Sunday, which I think is insane, is the fact that he gives free 20% crit rate. And free 20 crit is insane. Like, I can't emphasize how important free 20% crit rate is. Like, 20 crit is like the equivalent of 2 pieces of gear of crit. So if you are running a DPS, your crit requirements are significantly less now. You only, instead of aiming for 100% crit rate, now you only have to build 80% crit rate and then invest your other subsets in crit damage or attack percent. Also, another thing about Sunday is that he doesn't only have one type of scalars that he buffs, because he doesn't have an attack buff in his kit. He has the total damage. What this means is that he can buff both attack scalars and also HP scalars, like Jingliu. Like, Jingliu is an HP scalar, so she can work well with Sunday. If Sunday was, for example, an attack buffer, then part of his kit won't work with Jingliu, right? But yeah, this is why Sunday and Sparkle are good. So the next one is gonna be Bronya. So you can think of Bronya as like a worse Sunday and Sparkle, because Bronya does almost the same thing that these two do, except that they are worse, because Bronya gives less buffs. She also acts like Sunday, where she also gives 100% action advance to your DPS, so that's good. But the issue is that Bronya is very SP negative, so you will always find yourself running out of SP, because Sunday generates SP, especially if you have his light con. Sparkle Church, like, that's her whole gimmick, but Bronya doesn't. And Bronya, like, she has one of her dupes that gives like SP, but that's like RNG. It's only 50%, and it's only procs once every other turn. So I'm not gonna talk about that because I wanna talk about E0, even though Bronya is a standard character. But anyway, Bronya is like a worse Sunday and Sparkle, but she is a good option if you don't have any of these two. Like, I would say Bronya is like the best standard character that we have right now, maybe after Himeko. Well, we got the wealth buff now, so I think wealth is also good. But Bronya is like one of the best free supports that you can have. She is good. She also gives attack and crit damage. Oh, and by the way, unlike Sunday, so Bronya is more catered toward attack and crit damage, because her buffs, her ult gives specifically attack. So that attack percent doesn't benefit the HP scalars, which is not that big of a deal because there aren't that many HP scalars in the game anyway. But just figured to let you know, because you don't want to use Bronya with, like, I don't know, Jingliu and Maidi and then wonder why they're not doing that much damage. But yeah, this is about Bronya. Before I go further into like this list, there's one important thing that I want to point out about Sunday and Bronya's build, because this is very important. Like, you don't want to screw this up. And this is what we call the 134 plus 1. So what is the 134 plus 1? So when building Sunday and Bronya, you ideally only always want 134 speed, at least 134, and your DPS should be at least one speed higher than them. The reason for that is because you know the action bar when the cycle. So when you are reaching the 134 threshold of speed, this means that your character gets 2 actions per cycle, and this is good because when you do that, then your DPS also is getting more action advances from their supports, and they do more damage. I'm not gonna go into details because these speed thresholds are a bit complicated, but just to give you like the simple idea, there are 2 main speed thresholds. There's the 134 that allows you to take 2 turns in one cycle, and then there's the 160 speed, like you can do with Sparkle. She's 153 because she gets free speed from her Eidolon, so she's technically over 160. But 134 and 160 speed are the baselines of speed that you want to aim for with these characters. Typically it's going to be 134 because reaching 160 is a bit hard and most of the time is not realistic, but 134 is more than enough. So TLDR, you want at least 134 speed on your support, and your DPS should be at least 1 speed higher. Like if you look at Jingliu, I know she looks like 134, but technically she's more because this game has a hidden decimals, like you don't really see them here. But if you look in one of the databases that check your speed exactly, you will see that I will post them here when I edit the video. But my Jingliu has a higher speed than Sunday if you count the decimals, and this is, like I said, important. One thing to keep in mind, it's not like it has to necessarily be 134. Like for example, if you have 137 speed Sunday, that's fine, as long as your hyper carry is 1 speed higher than them. So if your Sunday is 137, your like DPS should be 138. This is like the most important thing. As for like the 160 speed, like those get 3 actions per cycle, it gets a bit complicated, especially when you factor in DDD and all of that. Those are some more advanced things, and you should not really think about them. Like the baseline is should be like the 134 plus 1, and that's all what you have to think about if you're a new player. And besides this, there's Tribbie. So Tribbie, you can think of her like a more modern Ruan Mei. So remember how I said Ruan Mei was a more a generalist support that supported a lot of archetypes? Tribbie is kind of the same, although she supports crit DPSs more because, like I said, Ruan Mei can also work with dodge and break, but Tribbie doesn't really work with dodge and break. But she has more amps compared to Ruan Mei, so this is why she is good for crit DPSs. Her main gimmick is that every time someone in the team ults, she triggers one follow-up attack from like her passive. And her damage used to be respectable. Back when she released, her damage was alright. But nowadays, because of the HP inflations, like even if she do like 100k, like it doesn't really matter that much. So her DPS right now nowadays is kind of negligible, not gonna lie. Another support is gonna be RMC. So RMC, like main gimmick is that it also gives an action push, but the action advance is a bit more conditional compared to Sunday because you don't really have much control over it. I don't want to go into details because it's going to sound very complicated, but just know that the action advance of the RMC, like, by the way, RMC is Remembrance, the 8 MC. You get them after Amphorius. That action advance is a bit conditional and you don't really use it that often. It doesn't unlike Sunday or Sparkle or Bronya. But the other good thing about RMC is that they have a buff that makes your DPS deals a certain amount of their damage as true damage. So like that makes your DPS still do more damage to them. And they also provide free 10% crit rate. And remember what I said earlier, free crit rate is always good. We always welcome that in this house. So this is one of the best budget options that you can have. The next one is going to be Heng. So Heng is more of a sustain than a support, but he also has some more support, like he buffs attack. Heng is a good option to use if you want like a sustain who also acts as a support. So like this is why you see a lot of people can use him with, I don't know, characters like Acheron or other characters who need like attack buffs, because that's what Heng does. He's a comfort pick if you want need a sustain while also having support capabilities. Other than that, these are basically the main options for like the crit DPS. Another option that I'm kind of hesitant about bringing is like Jing Yuan, but Jing Yuan is very old. Like she's a character who got released back when the game released. She gives energy, which is nice, but her buffs are not really like that significant nowadays. Like you're better off using maybe Heng and RMC, who's also free, rather than using Jing Yuan. Like even Bronya is technically free if you lost your 50-50 to her or something. But yeah, these are going to be the crit DPS support. So this crit DPS support, you can imagine them like all working with these characters that I'm going to be mentioning here. Okay, so now let's talk about the crit DPSs. Because there is a lot of crit DPSs in the game, I'm not going to go into details, like into in-depth details about what each character do, right? Because otherwise I'm going to be spending like 10 or 15 minutes on each character, and this video is going to be like 4 or 5 hours long. So I'm going to give brief explanations on what the characters do, and then I will be telling you which teammates they pair best with. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the wife, who's Jingliu. So Jingliu has a few options. Like her main options, I think what I use personally is that I use Sparkle and Sunday with her, and of course use Hyacinth. Hyacinth I didn't bring her yet, but this is Hyacinth. But I'm leaving that one for another like category. But anyway, Jingliu, you're gonna be using her with Sparkle and Sunday. She scales now with HP, so she doesn't benefit from attack buffers, like for example Bronya or Jing Yuan or even Heng. So she has also a gimmick where every time someone in the team loses HP, she gets once her stacks, and if she is at max stacks, then she gets like a defense pen, and that's pretty much what she does. Honestly, Jingliu is kind of outdated nowadays. Like if you wanna if you wanna invest in a DPS, like even if you want to invest in a HP scaler, you're better off investing in Mighty. Like Mighty is just better than her, honestly. But if you really love Jingliu like I do, then you can still invest in her and make her work. Next up is Aglaia. So Aglaia has a few options too. Like her best in slot teammates is going to be always Sunday. So if you want to pull for anyone for Aglaia, it's going to be always Sunday. But other than that, she also has a lot of flexibility. Like for example, you can use Siren who is like specifically dedicated to buffing the Chrysos hairs. Also, like you need like HuoHuo, this one. But because Aglia's main gimmick is that she has high speed, but she's also very energy hungry. And this is one of the reasons why Sunday is good for her, because he gives her a lot of energy. And if you want like a sustain option with her, like one of best sustain is going to be HuoHuo, because she also gives her more energy. But yeah, she is an lightning DPS who synergizes well with Sunday and HuoHuo and even Siren. And she also has other good synergies, like for example with Tribbie and even RMC2 if you want to use them. But yeah, this is for Aglaia. I don't have Aglaia, so I can't tell you much about her like main like her in-depth stuff. But this is what I know about her, and this is basically what the team is that everyone uses with her. Next is Anaxa. So Anaxa is another character who is a Chrysos heir from Amphorius. So this means he also synergizes with Cyrene. And other than Cyrene, the other characters who is really important for him is gonna be Seridra. So Seridra is basically one of his best teammates alongside Cyrene. So if you want to play Anaxa, then I would highly prioritize Seridra, and if you can even get E1 Seridra, then that would be even better. Because Anaxa is a skill spammer. He does multiple skills when he certain conditions are met. So this is why you want to use like Seridra, who is also a skill buffer. Other than those two, you can also use RMC with him. This is basically his main gimmick. Also, Anax's one main gimmick is that he inflicts weaknesses on the enemies. So this is why if you look at Anax's gameplay, you're always going to be seeing an enemy as like all 7 weaknesses on them. That's because of Anaxa. And Anaxa, if like once all of the weaknesses are implemented on the boss or the enemies, he procs his skill twice. But because of Seridra, he procs that skill even more. Like he's so instead of twice, it procs 4 times. Like he just keep shoo, 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 like he just keeps shooting with his gun. Next is Archer. So Archer's also main gimmick is that he consumes more SP. Like the more SP he consumes, the more his skill does damage. So what this means is that his best teammate is gonna be Sparkle. Sparkle is like his ultimate best teammate that you can use with him. But besides of that, you can also use like Dunhead. Well, Sparkle is always gonna be with him, by the way. Like you never want to separate Sparkle from Archer because she is. You can think of her like a requirement for Archer to work. Without Sparkle, like your Archer's performance is going to be very bad because not only does Sparkle increase the max cap of the skill points, but she also provides him more skill points for him to keep spamming his skill because he needs to consume those SP to get more skills out. But Dunhead is also another option. Like he is, like I said, he's good for most attack scalers. And other than that, like you can just use maybe, I don't know, Sunday, Bronya, or any of the other crit DPSs. But his core teammate is gonna be Sparkle. Argenti, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember much about Argenti. It's not like I don't remember, but Argenti was never really relevant in the meta, to be honest. His main gimmick is that he has 2 ult chars, and once he feels all of his ult energy, then like the second ult that he has when both your energies are full, he does more damage. He's also like an AoE DPS and Erudition. And Erudition like so bad, honestly. Like there's not a single thing that Erudition do that Destruction can't do. But yeah, this is for Argentine. There's not much for me to say about him. I'm sorry if you love him, but he is at least a funny guy. At least he had some really like funny moments in the story. Blade, my boy, one of my favorite characters. So Blade basically does like he consumes his HP to do damage, and after he loses his HP after a certain amount of time, whether from him doing damage or from being attacked, he can proc his follow-up attacks that heals him. And his ult also, like, he has an ult that acts 2 different ways. If your HP is above 50%, that it reduces his HP to 50%, and if it's below 50%, that it restores his HP to 50%. But Blade is honestly very outdated. Like there's no need for you to use him over like Mighty, who I'm going to be talking about. I love Blade. Like when he released a real Blade is, even when Honkai Star released, he was my favorite character in the game, and even to this day he's one of my top 3 favorite characters. But I'm gonna be honest, he's not really good. Like just like most of the 1.x characters, he's not really good. And speaking of 1.x characters that are not good, is gonna be Danheng Imbibitor Lune, who is a skill spammer who the more skill points he consumes, the more damage he does. So this means it also works well with Sparkle and Sunday. But like I said, he's not really that great. Like, I'm gonna be honest, he really needs a Nova Flare. And even if he gets a Nova Flare, I'm not sure if that's gonna be push him like that high. Like, Dan Heng was good when he released. He was the most broken character in the game, but nowadays he's not. Like, he's really not that great. But if you want to invest in him, like I said, you can use him with Sparkle and Sunday and any of the other supports in here. Jade. If you evade your taxes, then Jade is gonna come to your ass with her whip. But jokes aside, Jade has like her skill that applies a certain buff on your like one of your carries, one of your characters in the team, and the more the more enemies that character hit, the more stacks Jade gets. And once she reaches her requirement stacks, then she does a follow-up attacks. Honestly, Jade, when she released, she was really, really good in pure fiction. She was basically specifically designed for pure fiction. She was not really good for bosses even back then. But nowadays, I would say Jade has fallen off so much because not only is her damage very low, but her only content that she could be used in is pure fiction. But even that nowadays, she feels so weak in pure fiction by today's standards because of the HP inflation. I think Jade is good, like when it comes to her gimmick, when it comes to her AoE, because she's an AoE queen. So when it comes to AoE, you can pair her with an erudition character, like maybe the Herta or any of the other AoE characters. She is good with them, but the issue is that her only issue I think personally is that she has low damage. If they at least improve her damage, or I don't know, maybe if they lessen her requirement stacks to launch her follow-up, maybe she might be good. But I also think she might need some debuffs on the enemies, or maybe some sort of buffs to the character that she applies her buff to, or something like that. But yeah, Jade is alright. I don't think she's as great as she used to be. There's a lot of other better options to use in pure fictions compared to her. But if you want to use her, then you can use her with like character like the Herta. Like I said, she is mainly going to be used for the AoE. So whichever character that you're going to be using with, she's going to be sharing the same support. Like for example, if you use Jade with the Herta and Tribbie, then Tribbie is basically going to be buffing both Jade and the Herta. You can also maybe use Robin because Robin lost follow-up damage. But other than that, like you might end up just using the other standard support like Spark and Sunday. The thing is that Sunday and Spark are just too good to a lot of crit DPSs to use over like other like suboptimal options. Our beloved General Jing Yuan, who was pretty much doomed since his release. Well, I'm not gonna say he was really bad when he released, but like even on his release, the way which was in 1.0, he was just alright. Like so, you can imagine how he is nowadays. I would say when Sunday released, a lot of people got excited because it kind of brought back Jing Yuan. But then Aglaia released after him, and then she kind of power crept him. But Jing Yuan's main gimmick is that he has a certain summon called the Lightning Lord, and that Lightning Lord has his own separate action bar in the action advance. So even if you push Jing Yuan, then his Lightning Lord doesn't get pushed. The only exception for that is with Sunday. This is why I said Sunday was good for Jing Yuan when he released, is because Sunday pushes both of him and his Lightning Lord. So he no longer gets any of those situations when his Lightning Lord acts after the cycle ends or any of those shenanigans. But yeah, if you want to use Jing Yuan, like you're just going to be using him with any of the other supports, but his important teammate is going to be Sunday. Sunday is his most important teammate. And if you can get E1 Sunday, then it's even better because not only does it provide defense shred, but it's also give more defense shred if that character has a summon. And it applies to both the character and to the summon. I think the value is 40%. So without a summon, he only provides 16% defense rate. But with a summon, he provides 40% defense rate. So this is why he is good for Jing Yuan. Other than that, you can maybe use Sparkle, Tribbie, like they said, any of these teams. But Jing Yuan is not a character that I recommend using. There's plenty of other lightning DPSs that you can use, like Aglaia, Acheron, and so on. Yunli, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be completely. I'm not gonna pretend that I know what I'm talking about. I literally don't know what. I don't remember what Yunli does. Like I never paid attention to her when she released. I don't think she was ever meta relevant, just like Argentine. This is why they both got added into the 50-50 lost pool. I don't know what she does. All I know is that she has something to do when she attacks, then she triggers a follow-up attack. So you can use her with the characters who buff follow-up attacks, like Robin, Tribbie, and so on. Like honestly, I don't remember what she does. And the Giga Chad himself, the king of Kremnos, Mighty. So Mighty is like the better HP scaler that you can get in the game, better than Jingliu and Blade. He is just straight up better than them. There's no reason for you to invest in Blade and Jingliu if you want an HP scaler, unless if you really like them. But anyway, Mighty has he has a gimmick where you can't control him. Like you don't like his main gimmick is that you don't play him because he goes in auto mode when he triggers his rage mode, and then like he just keeps attacking. Back when he released, it was a bit awkward to use, but then Cyrene released. Cyrene is here. Cyrene kind of saved him because what Cyrene did is that she made him be usable with the best HP scaler support who's Hyacin. So if you want to use Mighty, your best team is going to be Cyrene and Hyacin, these two. And then you can use maybe RMC or Tribbie. Like Tribbie is also good for him. But the main characters that you're going to be using for him right now are going to be Hyacin and Cyrene for Mighty. He is really solid now. Like after Cyrene is released, he is very solid, unlike when he released at the start, because Cyrene gives him an insane amount of crit damage, and Hyacinth synergizes well with him too. And because Hyacinth gives an increased max HP, this means that Mighty does even more damage. But yeah, Mighty is like one of the best, if not the best bruiser in the game right now. Our Peerless Gem herself, our Madame Herta, or as I like to call her, the Herta. So the Herta is erudition character who, when she was released, she was really good. Like she was really good in pure fiction. That was the content where she excelled in because she's AoE. So of course that's the environment where she is the most good at. The issue is though, like I said in my horizontal and vertical investment, is that she's kind of falling off. Like an E0, the Herta, she's kind of like not that great. I'm gonna be honest, she's not really that good. If you want to invest in the Herta, then you have to get her E2. So her E2 kind of make her better compared to her E0. Even then, I would say like an E2 she's basically just like she's just as good as any of the newer characters in the current meta right now. So that's kind of unfortunate. But if you want to invest in the Herta, then you can use her with characters like Sunday, because the Herta kind of need like energy. So if you can provide her with energy, then that's really good. So Sunday does both of that and also buffs her and gives her action advance. There's also HuoHuo if you want to use her with a sustain. HuoHuo is this one. Like if you're in a sustain team, then you use HuoHuo because she also provides her with energy. And of course, like this 4 team issue with the Herta is that you need to run her with another erudition character. She's kind of similar to Acheron when she needs to run with a nihility, but for her she also needs erudition. There are a few options. I think one of the best options that you can use for her is Anaxa, but it's funny because when Anaxa released, a lot of people expected that he's going to be a slave for the Herta. So when Anaxa released, he ended up surprising a lot because it turned out that he works better without her than with her. Like if you want to run Anaxa, then he works better if you use him as a hyper carry compared to running him with the Herta. But the Herta works better when you run her with Anaxa. So anyway, if you want to use her, then you're gonna be using her with characters like Sunday, Anaxa, or maybe HuoHuo, or I don't know, Sparkle, or teams like that. But like I said, she mainly excels in pure fiction and AoE content. If you're just going to be using in bosses, then I'm going to be honest, you're just wasting your time. It's better to use other characters than her. And I'm saying this as someone who really loves her. Like, the Herta is one of my top 3 favorite characters in Honkai Star Rail. Next up is Saber. So Saber is another character who is very energy hungry. And every time you hear energy hungry, then your mind should automatically go to Sunday. And this is why Sunday is one of her best teammates. Other than that, I don't think there's anything special about Saber because she just spams her ult and she does more damage and she works just like any other traditional DPS. Like if you can give her any character like Tribbie, Bronya, Sparkle, Heng, she works well with all of these. If you want to run her with a sustained option, then you run her with HuoHuo, who of course gives her more energy and sustain too. But yeah, Saber is very straightforward. Sealy, I'm gonna be honest, she's like the 1.0 character that literally every other gacha compared the character to, because she didn't age well. Like she's not that great. Her main gimmick is that she gets an extra turn when she kills an enemy, But the issue is that you need to kill the enemy first. So if you can't kill shit, then what is even the point? Honestly, like there's no point in investing in City. No, I'm gonna be honest. Like there's a reason why she got added in the 50-50 lost pool. If you want to use her though, you can just use her with any of these teams. Like there is not a very specific team for her. Her kit is very straightforward. Like she's just every skill in her kit does damage. Her only game maker, only thing that is different about her is that she gets a turn when she procs when she kills an enemy, and that's it. But like yeah, you can use her with Sparkle Sunday and any other teammate. Our grandpa Welt. So Welt after his buffs is now he's legit. Like Ankh got hands right now. Like if you miss with Ankh, then he was gonna throw you to the void. Welt now is good, but the issue is that he's only good at E4. I think it's E4 or E6. I can't remember which one. I think it was. I can't remember which of his Eidolon gives him the crit rate and crit damage, but that should be the one. I think it's either E4 or E6. But anyway, Welt is really good now. He can be used both as a DPS and also like as a good debuffer, because now his debuffs are genuinely good. Like he really works well with some characters like Acheron and some other. I wouldn't say like he's top tier. Like I wouldn't say like he's like top tier 0 or anything, but he is legit. Like if you have him, then you can definitely use him. Like he is really good. You can even use him as a support where with some characters like Acheron, or you can use him as a DPS himself with characters like Sunday, with the supports like Sunday and Sparkle. Like I know I keep mentioning Sunday and Sparkle because they are some of the most broken characters for crit DPSs. But yeah, he is good now, unlike before. Like if you just came back in the game and you don't know what Well does, then you're gonna be surprised when you see what kind of buffs that he gets. Like Well's buffs, he got to be one of the best buffs we got in the game, up there with the likes of Kafka and Sparkle. Yanshin, who? Shinshuhu. And that's it for the crit DPS. Next up is the Monorem. Monorem is the Mono Remembrance team. We call it Monorem because all of the characters are Remembrance. And that team consists of Cyrene, Hyacinth, Castoris, and Evernight. So this is basically the premium team if you want to use Castoris or the premium Monorem. Like this is the best team that this used to be one of the best teams in the game actually. When Cyrene released, she basically completed this team, and it was one of the most broken. Like I would say even now, I think it's one of the most, like I would say it's like top three best teams in the game right now maybe. I'm not too sure because I'm not familiar with the current power level of the new characters that we just got here, like Evanesia and Civil Wolf. I don't know how those compare to this team, but you can't go wrong with Mono Remembrance though. But anyway, this team is stupidly broken. The thing with this team is that every single character in this team does damage. Like even the Sustain, who's Hyacinth, does damage. And the other thing is that all characters synergize with each other. So the main gimmick with this whole team is that every time someone loses HP, it procs something about the other character. And they all have some way to lose HP. Like Evernight loses HP from her summon. Hyacinth, if you have a light con, she makes you lose HP in your whole team. Castoris as well, and Castoris is going to be like the main damage dealer in the team. Cyrene buffs the Chrysos Ears, which is all of these three characters, so she synergizes well with them. She also does decent damage. The only issue is that Cyrene is mainly good when she is at E2. Like I don't know exactly how she performs at E0 in the Monorem though, but I know that with the other teams she does require E2. And honestly, like if you just want to invest in Cyrene in general, then I would recommend you getting her E2. Like her E2 is really good. Because her E2, what it does basically is that it makes her ult faster. Because she gets hers, like she needs 24 stacks to reach her to ult, and those stacks are very slow to get if you don't have the E2. But after the E2, she basically starts the battle with some of her stacks already charged. So she basically scales faster to ult, and then she keeps giving her buffs to the other Chrysos Ears in the team. But yeah, Hyacinth, like she increases the max HP, which like something that the other characters benefit from, especially Castoris, because Castoris is an HP scaler. And Evernight, I would say like Evernight works well without Castoris actually. Like you can use Evernight without Castoris and you still use her with Hyacinth Cyrene, but use her with someone else, like if you want to. But this team is like the premium Monorem team. And it still works well even at E0, with the exception of Cyrene. But other than that, like this team used to be one of the best teams, and it's genuinely really good. The next two tiers are gonna be character specific, and the reason is it's not because they are my favorite. Like, I know I showed earlier that I have both of them at E6, but that's not the reason why I do it. Maybe it's part of it because I know a lot about them, but other than that, like, because Acheron and Phainon require some very specific teammates, especially Acheron. So Acheron's teammates, her passive requires her to have nihility characters in the team, especially if you have a lot at E0. So before I start, if you want to invest in Acheron, like, you have to get her E2. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you, oh no, she can be used at E0 or not. Like, if you want to suffer and use her at E0 with like suboptimal performance, then feel free to do so. Like I said, this video is mainly going to be about how to optimize characters. But an E0 Acheron, like, I don't think she's very usable nowadays. Like, even an E2 Acheron right now, she's very weak. Like, my Acheron is E6 even, and I don't really use her anymore. So you can imagine how weak E0 is. The thing about her E2 is that not only does she get free crit rate, which is always good, she gets a total of 18% crit rate, if I remember correctly, from her dupes. But that's not the reason. The reason is because at E0 she needs two other nihility characters. What this means is that you need Acheron on top of other two. So like, that's already three teammates that are used, and that leaves you with room with only one teammate. But her E2 lessen that requirements to only one more nihility. So this means that you need Acheron with one nihility character for her to function, and then those two other spots can be used either by two supports or one support and one sustain, which I'll be talking about. So for Acheron, what is her best teammates? It's a very hard question nowadays, because this is one of the reasons why there's a lot of Acheron copying nowadays. So her best teammate before was Xiaoshu. Xiaoshu was her premium teammate because Xiaoshu not only gives her, like, makes the enemies vulnerable to ult damage, which is Acheron's main source of damage. She's an ult spammer. He also gives her, he helps her with more her stacks. So Acheron gets her stacks when someone in the enemy teams inflicts debuff. Not only when someone inflicts an debuff. Like, for example, I'm sure this is something that not many people know, but for example, if you break the toughness of an enemy, they get a debuff. That debuff also counts towards Acheron stacks, by the way, even if the character who inflicted that break doesn't inflict any debuffs, but that still gives Acheron a stack. But anyway, every time an enemy gets a debuff, whether from a teammate or if they self-inflict it somehow, because there are some enemies who do that, she gets a stack. And she needs 9 stacks for those. And Jiaoshu helped her with that, because not only do his ult and basic attacks do debuffs, but his ult has a zone that every time an enemy takes an action, they gets inflicted with a debuff, and that debuff contributes to Acheron's stacks. So this is the reason why Jiaoshu was good for her. Another teammate for her was Silver Wolf after she got her buffs. So Silver Wolf is also like gives a lot of amps and she inflicts debuffs, but the Silver Wolf is only good at E2 actually. So if you want to use Silver Wolf, you're better off using her at E2. The reason because E2, it makes every character in the team, every time they hit someone, they get inflicted with a debuff. And this is when it comes to like team synergies. So an E2 Silver Wolf synergizes well with Tribbie. Because like I said earlier, Tribbie, every time someone uses an ult, she launches the follow-up attack. And that follow-up attack also inflicts a debuff from Silver Wolf's E2. Like I said, every time someone do, like any attack, like any time someone, even if they use a normal attack, they're going to be inflicting debuff because of Silver Wolf's E2. So this gives a good synergy with Tribbie. This was a good team, like Acheron, Silver Wolf, and Tribbie. This is a good team for Acheron. But I'm going to be honest, like even nowadays, like, okay, give me 1 second. Okay, I just had to make a copy for Tribbie. So even nowadays, I would say, like, even with the Silver Wolf and Tribbie team and Acheron, I would say this team, Acheron is not really that good. Like, she still generates her stacks very slowly, and enemies are way tankier nowadays. Like, by the time she has enough stacks to ult, even when she ults, like, the damage that she do is not really that great compared to some of the other characters. But that's just the nature of the power creep and how the game operates nowadays. But if you really want to use Acheron, then you can use her with these characters, and you can also use her with Sparkle if you want support, like a character action advancer. You can technically use her with Sunday too, but Personally, I think Sparkle is better. Another character that you can actually use with Acheron, like if you need a sustain, because if you notice, like these are just like amplifiers and debuffers, like they don't provide any sustain. The other sustain options for Acheron are gonna be Heng, which is this one. Okay, give me 1 minute. I'm sorry, this was scuffed because I had to add Hysilens and Heng to the list, which I forgot to do. But anyway, the Acheron sustains that you can use for her are Heng, which is one of her best sustains actually, especially if you have copies of Heng, because not only does he provide shields to the team, but he also gives her attack buff, and then there's also his relic set, who also provides even more buffs. So he is one of the best sustain options that you can use for him. Another option that I don't see people talk about a lot is Hyacinth. But Hyacinth is mainly good if you have her S1, her light cone, because her light cone not only provides debuffs, like it gives debuffs, but it also gives like the debuff is good, like it inflicts increased total damage that the enemy does. I wouldn't say it's like game breaking or anything. Like you can use her if you have her, but if you don't, then you can just use Dunhead, because Dunhead was free. We got him for free when he released. Anyway, like I said, the most important thing about Acheron is that you need to run her with a second Nihility. This is assuming you have her E2. Like everything I'm going to be talking about is that assuming you have E2. I know, like, I don't like to bring up Dupe, but Acheron's E2, like, is one of the best events. Like, it's the same thing that I said about Firefly. You need her E2 if you want to make her function. So you run her alongside one of the other Nihilities, which is either Zhao or Silver Wolf. Then if you need a sustain, then you run her with Heng or Hyacinth. Ideally, it's going to be Heng. And the other amp is either going to be Tribbie or Sparkle. If you run in Silver Wolf, then you're going to be running Tribbie. If you run in, for example, Zhao, then you can just reuse Sparkle or something. One thing, I don't really want to talk about this because we still don't know about his kit, but we just got like the reveal that SP Blade is going to be released next update. And it was revealed that it's going to be Nihility. And if you are an Acheron main, then every time you see a Nihility character, then you're always going to get excited and you'll be wondering whether they're going to be work or not with Acheron. I don't follow the leaks, so I don't know what Blade does. Like, I don't really follow the leaks, I don't really care about them. But if he ends up being like a good support for Acheron, then he might replace Zhao and Silver Wolf. Like, for example, assuming that Blade is good for her, if he buffs her or if he gives her enough stacks, then you might run him instead of Zhao and Silver Wolf. You might still run Tribbie though, because Tribbie, like, she is still gonna be good, and Sparkle as well. But if he is like a good Acheron support, then these are the two characters that are gonna be replaced. But if he's not, like, I don't know, if he only works with I don't know. He might end up being like a dot like support. Like if he works with dot, then you might replace Ruan Mei with him and use him instead. If he works like with follow up attack, then you're gonna be running him with Ashveil instead of Feixiao. But yeah, like I don't want to talk too much about SP Blade because I don't know his kit and I don't know what he does. But this is just something to keep in mind. By the time his kit release, like if you're watching this after the update, after his release, then you can maybe ask in the comments and I can answer you, or maybe I can even edit, like in the pinned post I can make an edit there where you can where I can tell you whether he works well with Acheron or not. But yeah, this is it for Acheron. Alright, I forgot something about Acheron. So Acheron's other teammate is Cypher. Actually, I don't know how the hell did I forget about her, but anyway, Cypher is also good because she has a lot of follow-up attacks, and if you run her, like for example with Tribbie or Silver Wolf, then she kind of contribute to that. But I would say like Cypher and Zhao, they are kind of on par, even though there was a huge war when Cypher released it. This is one of the reasons we're gonna be seeing a lot of Acheron memes. It was from that era, because when Cypher released. But anyway, Cypher is good, but I wouldn't say like she is that significantly better. I would say Cypher Wolf E2 is still one of the best investments for her. And now for Phainon, my husband, my favorite character in the game after Himeko. But Himeko is only because of Honkai Impact 3 and all of that, so it's a bit unfair. But anyway, you're not here to hear my story. So Phainon, the reason I put him here is not just because I have him at E6, but also he works differently compared to the other DPSs. Because with Phainon, when he enters his ult mode, then every character in the team just Thanos snap. They don't exist in the field anymore. And this is why you have to buff stack him. So the thing with Phainon is that every buff that you gave him before he enters his buff, he enters his ult, he maintained them. Like, he don't lose them. Even when he takes turns into his ult, he doesn't lose those buffs. We call this snapshot. Snapshots is when you take the buffs that were obtained before, like your ult or whatever, and you still maintain them even during that. So when Phainon snapshot the buffs, you first have to stack them. So this is why it's important to use him with buffers, and this is one of the reasons why you are most likely going to be using Phainon Teams Sustainless, because he doesn't really need sustains. He already sustained himself in his ult, and he also gets a lot of damage reduction. So it's very rare where you're gonna be dying with the final when he enters the ult. I don't think I ever died with finals uh, when he is in his ult. The important thing that I'm gonna be like recommending for final before anything else is to get his E2 before even his light cone. In fact, I'm gonna be making an icon here specifically for that. Give me 1 minute. So this is how important his E2 is. Like I said earlier, there's two characters that I don't really say like there's a lot of must pools Idolians in the game. Like some of them are really good, but they're not really must pool. But like I said about just like I said about Firefly, I would say the same thing about Final. So Final is the other character that his E2 is like night and day. You really want his E2 if you want to make him good, because his E2, what it does is that it gives him an extra turn when he skills, and this is not only good because it's basically doubles his turns, but it also allows him to do even more meteors. Like the meteors is like the skill that he do. So when you proc his meteor, then you skill, then you get 2 stacks. So this makes him do more meteors in his ult rotation. Without an E2, like he is significantly worse. And by the way, like why I said about E2, like the extra turn, that extra turn is just one of parts of the passive, because the other part of his E2 is that it gives him more more pain. It gives him more pain. So not only do you get extra turns, but you also get more damage. So his E2 is like one of the most broken E2s in the game. I'm gonna be honest. So if you want to invest in final, you could have to pull for his E2 before even his light cone. Like if you can afford only one, then go for E2 before his light cone, and then get his light cone on his reroll. His light cone is good. Like don't get me wrong, his light cone is really good, but not as good as his E2. Okay, so just to make this clear. So his next investment is going to be Seridra. Seridra is like the next most cool, but the next best thing that you're going to want for him. Especially if you can also get her E1. Like I only got my Seridra E1 just for him. Seridra is good because she makes him proc his meteor twice, which is his main source of damage. And that's even more insane. So when you combine Seridra with his E2, then you just notice that there's like everything procs twice. Like he gets twice as much turns because of his E2, he procs twice as many meteors because of Seridra, and also Seridra gives him a lot of buffs. So yeah, Phainon relies a lot on his E2 on his Seridra, and with those two, it makes him one of the best DPSs in the game. So yeah, if you want to invest in him, get these like two things first before anything else. Other than that, then you have more options. Like his best options are going to be Sunday and Sparkle, just like the other traditional DPSs, because they gave him buffs and he can snapshot those buffs during his ult, and he can still maintain the buffs of all of these three in the same team. If you need, for example, a sustain, then his best sustain is going to be Heng Terra, because like it's the same argument like I said for everyone else. So I'm not going to repeat the same thing. But yeah, he is the best sustain for this team, even though, like I said, it's very rare where you're going to need a sustain. Other than that, you can also use RMC, Remembrance MC, because they give like the true damage, and that true damage also applies in the finals like old form. The only thing about Remembrance MC is that you have to pay attention on how you use your skills, because there is a chance that you might not snapshot the buffs before he enters his ult, and then like you might screw up with your rotation. But yeah, this is gonna be the team for final. Like his most important investments are gonna be his E2 followed by Seridra, and then you can use any of these characters in him for him. So the last team that I'm gonna be covering is Elation. The reason I left it last is because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too familiar with this team, with the Elation teams now. I know they are good. That's mainly because the content is shilling them, but I know their mechanic as well, but I don't have any plans to invest in the Elation meta. I don't play the Elation meta, and also they are still kind of new. There's only been 2 updates since they got introduced, and even one of those updates we got Ashveil, who's not even an Elation. He was a hunt character, a hunt who was a follow-up character. But yeah, we only have a few Elation teams in the game, and there's only like 2 teams in the game. But anyway, the important thing for Elation though that I really know is that you need to pull for Yaogang. If you want to invest in Elation, then you absolutely have to pull for Yaogang. You can think of Yaogang as the how Dahlia is for Break or how Hysilens is for Dot. Like, she is one of the core characters for Elation. Any Elation team is going to be using Yaogang, no exceptions. I believe, like even the current teams right that we have right now, I see everyone use them for. But other than that, like these are the Elation characters. We have Evanesia who just released these updates. I'm recording this actually like 2 or 3 days after her release. We have the new Silver Wolf, like the level 999, and we have the Sparksy. So these are the Elation characters that we have in the game. Oh, and we also have the MC, like a Elation MC. So these are the characters that we have right now for the Elation. Like I said, Yao Gang is going to be the main character that you want to use. Other than that, I know that the team that Evanesia use is Yao Gang, Evanesia, RMC. No, not RMC, is Elation MC, and HuoHuo. Like HuoHuo is the character that goes well with Evanesia because Evanesia also needs energy to get her punchlines and the Elation shenanigans. And for Silver Wolf, she uses Sparksy. Like this is her important team. So Sparksy is mainly used with Silver Wolf, but she's not used with Evanesia. So Evanesia seems technically like the low cost compared to Silver Wolf because Silver Wolf needs Sparksy and also Yaogang, but Evanesia only needs Yaogang, and the other character is free. And HuoHuo is kind of free too if you get it from the Golden Shop. But that says about the Elation. We still don't know, we don't have many characters for this archetype yet. We might get more in Plan Arcadia because after all, it's the Elation region. So you can maybe just follow, like see how, what are the support that we might get. Because I think we might get another support other than Yaogang. Because Yaogang is getting overworked right now. She has to, two teams need her. And if you have to use both of those teams, then one of them won't be using this team. And it's gonna tank the performance of that team significantly. But yeah, I think that's it for the list. Like, I know you see these characters, but these characters, like, they're just not usable. Like, eventually might be the best one from this list because he can still be kind of used, but also he's kind of overshadowed by Dan Heng in here. But these characters that you see here are all sustained, so, and they are better sustained than them that are even free. There's no reason. Like, Fushan is like in the 50-50 loss anyway, so we might get her. Lucha is, just forget about it. He's not really that good. There are other sustained that are better than him. Jeopard, like, no. Natasha, no. And these characters, like, they're 4 stars that are not really used anymore. Pela, she used to be decent maybe 1 year ago or 2 years ago, but nowadays we got way too many better debuffer than her. Then she doesn't really have any place in the meta. Herta, she's like a budget option if you want to use her with the Herta in pure fiction. Sampo, no. He used to be a good dot support, but not anymore. After Black Swan released, he had no place in there. Asta, no. She used to be a good support when the game released because she used to give speed and also some attack, but her kit is very clunky. And RMC are already talked about. Like, RMC, this is not mine because like this template, I just got it from, it was a public template from the tier maker that I use, and this is just like a placeholder. But yeah, this is for these characters. This is why I'm not really mentioning them or putting them in here. But that's all for this video. I hope you learned some things. Like, I went through like how to invest horizontally or vertically depending on what you need, on whether you're free to play or not. I went through the gearing system, and I also went through like which characters to pull for each team in the whole game. So I hope you learned something from this video. So I am actually planning to make a similar video for other games. Like, the 2 games that I have in mind right now are Genshin and Wuthering Waves, but I'm also planning to make a bigger one for Grand Blue Fantasy, but that one is going to take a longer time because that game has so many other things to cover that you don't expect that video to come anytime soon. But if this video helped you, like, let me know, and also let me know if there are any things that I could improve on, because this is my first official guide that I do in this channel, because I just started my channel. All of this YouTube stuff is still new for me, and I am planning to make more similar guides for all of the gachas that I play. If you want to know what are the gachas that I play, I already made a video, which is the first video that I made in my channel 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's going to be 3 weeks by the time I release this video, and you can see the games that I play in there. And if you want to, like, you have any ideas about any of the videos in there, feel free to recommend them for me. Like, even in that video, I already got a couple ideas for some the videos that I'm gonna be making in the future. But yeah, this is gonna be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something from it, and see you next time.